Minister's bill now be read a second time, I call the member for Ballina.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to contribute on behalf of the Greens to the Transport Administration Amendment, Closures of Railway Lines in Northern Rivers Bill 2020. And I particularly note at the outset that the nuance of the member for Tweed and the member for Lismore of their speeches, because, like me, they know that this is a very, very complicated story and it goes back a long, long time, and it is absolutely not an easy one, and it is certainly worthy of far more than the wedging that we've seen from some of the city MPs in the opposition. Very disappointing. The Greens do not oppose rail trails, but this is about this legislation, and what we do oppose is this legislation because it has been rushed through. We've had a week to look at it, and we tried to get an inquiry into the bill, which we had the support of the entire crossbench, but Labor blocked that. And that's very, very disappointing, because it would have given our communities in the Northern Rivers time to engage with this bill, because the symbolism is not missed by anyone. The member from Miranda just said it, that the Transport has no desire to return rail to the Northern Rivers. No desire. And that's what people understand. They understand that that infrastructure was taken and that it isn't coming back. And that is the moment that we're marking here. And we also do not understand enough about this bill. And I thank the Minister for briefing us, and even his own legal counsel remarked that the lease provision in this bill, it's uncertain how that could play out. A 99-year lease could certainly open the door to a private commercial enterprise other than the prescribed public bodies in this. So we will definitely be making amendments in the other place around that. But Mr Speaker, we've shown that in my electorate of Ballina, we have shown that we can return rail and that we can have it all. We can actually have it both. And it's interesting to be quoted back my speech on the Tumbarumba bill, because of course nothing has changed. We do not see this as an either-or sum game, and neither does my community. We have shown, if I had said to the Minister for Transport 5 years ago that we would have a solar train in Byron, he would have laughed at me, because it is a non-profitable train. And I know, because I've worked very closely with Jeremy Holmes in establishing that rail. It is not profitable. It is almost a community service, but of course it benefit elements of Byron. But that solar train is not commercially viable, but it has brought so much joy and so much accessibility and connectability to communities around that area. And that is the model that Byron Council has also pursued. And I want to give a huge shout out to the Mayor of Byron, Simon Richardson, and all of the people that worked together on the feasibility study for the Byron line, which is ready to go, and we are pursuing that in connecting up to Niagara. The solar train and that feasibility study tell you very clearly that in Byron Shire, we see this as a viable alternative, and we see it as a very, very significant way to keep cars out of Byron. We support cycle tourism, and honestly, if I had $1 for every time I've said that I support cycle tourism, I could buy an electric bike. I have visited the Otago, I've ridden the Otago, I've met the architect of the Queenstown Trust. I know a lot about rail trails, and I also want to say to the Northern Rivers Rail Trail, well done in terms of putting your project and continuing to put your project forward. But I do want to make sure very clear in this place that the Northern Rivers Rail Action Group and Trains on Our Track have been working tirelessly since 2003 to return rail, that for them this is so symbolic, because there's nothing in here that preserves the corridor in terms of the infrastructure, because the off-formation, on-formation, devil in the detail is what they are very, very concerned about. And I went up to Tweed Council, I met with the project manager of the Tweed project, Rail Trail project, and of course our Mayor, Katie Milne, and we the problem was that the off-formation model, which is such a win-win, which means you put the rail trail to the side and therefore absolutely preserving that transport on that corridor, including light rail, can return. Because we all know that once the rail trails are built in the middle of the corridor and millions of dollars is spent, who is going to stare down the barrel of that and make the case to return rail? And particularly when we know that the LNP have absolutely no thirst to return rail. So we're looking for the kinds of investors that we saw with the solar train. And how hard does that become for them? Because they're basically up against a different business model. And let's be clear, that's what this is about. You can say that it's about this bill, but it's not. It's about this moment in time and the symbolism. And public transport was taken. And I should know, my great-grandfather helped build the Casino to Mooloolaba line. And his parents were cane farmers in Mooloolaba, and they were the ones that pushed for this to get their cane out. So this is a very long, very complex, very historical sentiments that surround this. And that is not captured today by certainly some of the opposition speakers. The bill, what we are very concerned about is that that provision around the lease, and also that there is nothing that is going to make sure that they can coexist, that these rail trails can coexist with with trains, whether it's light rail or whatever is in terms of disruptors come back. And that's what we've seen. There was an incredible project that came, and they came and spoke to me about Bangalore to Byron. And it was a fascinating rail carriageway, very unusual disruptor, and they just couldn't get the funding. So they went offshore, they went to New Zealand, and it's very successful there. So we just don't know what's coming. Section 2293 states that this clause does not apply to a lease of the land, thereby opening the door for land along the rail corridor to be leased to a private entity for profit on a 99-year contract. And as I say, that is an amendment we will be moving. And I also want to commend, Mr Speaker, both Beth Shelley and Lydia Kindred and their efforts in getting their community submission on this, but also their study into the feasibility of returning rail. And I think that's the other issue, is that public transport, it's about face, because what would have been ideal would have been to have an inquiry, a short inquiry into the legislation, and then to have an inquiry into public transport in the Northern Rivers, so that we heard the member for Tweed talking about their desire to connect with the Gold Coast. We're border communities. There's all kinds of possibilities, and that opportunity is now, it's lost. It is lost, because we heard from the member from Miranda that the transport has no desire to return rail. So we are left with trying to entice private entrepreneurs to deliver what should be public transport. And that is not only shameful, but it is a moment that needs to be marked in this place. And Mr Speaker, we have shown in my electorate that you can have it all, that you can have your cake and eat it too. The Greens will be moving amendments in the upper house to strengthen the clauses around public ownership and to protect the rail corridor for use as a future railway. But we do fear that this is the end of that dream, and certainly it is going to be very, very hard to make the case that a business, the millions that is being talked about in building the rail trail, how do you stare that down and say, sorry, here we've got a disruptor and we want to rip out your business? We know that that's not going to happen. And it's disappointing that over the years, both polarities have said we can have both, but no one has been able to show that leadership. And I think that is a missed opportunity for the minister, it's a missed opportunity for the opposition, and it's a missed opportunity for everyone in our region, that we haven't been able to thrash that out and truly find a win-win. Because after all, we're not here to play games. I'm not here to play games. I'm not here to be wedged by people that have no idea about my community. I am looking for those wins that everybody wins, and this was one of those opportunities. It has been lost. We are terribly disappointed, and we do not support the bill.
Mr. Speaker.